This is Agnes, the presenter of Sickle Cell Talks with Agnes. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So stay tuned because every week we'll be posting videos about any topic in sickle cell disease. We don't have set days yet, but just turn on the post notifications for you to be notified every time we post a video. Thank you and stay tuned. If you've got any questions, get in touch with me on social media or social media platforms. Thank you. At this point, we have Professor Baba Inusa, who's going to do another presentation. You can take it off, Professor Inusa, please. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to participate on this platform. And can you imagine that I can get to Australia in just 1 second? So I'm now in Australia.
I know.
Yeah, and actually being in the same institution that I wanted to meet Joy, because we're sitting in committees and we argue different cases and we oppose each other, but now she's a friend today. So
Yes.
I thought, so what I'm going to do is just to run away with just a little bit. I know I have time limitations, but I wanted to tell you some of the projects that we are running, and so that I just Obviously, ARISE is one of the projects we're running, which includes a number of countries, and it's called African Research and Innovative Initiative, which is it's a project that is aimed at improving capacity in Africa, and a number of African countries are Nigeria, Kenya, and we're actually adding Zambia into that, and just in the process of confirming that, and 9 European institutions that allow to establish exchange to develop capacity and to help people through different aspects of training. And this project is for 4 years, started in January 2019. To determine the prevalence of sickle cell disease, we do that in Zambia, we do that in Nigeria, and also do that in Kenya. And then to facilitate engagement and to develop the individuals in terms of management. So there are 8 work packages. Obviously, the first one is staff management and coordination, but actually involves training in terms of e-health technologies, improved laboratory diagnosis, and kind of developing capacity in the management of sickle cell disease. I saw these questions and I absolutely loved them. And so a number of people who may be on this platform may actually have asked the questions. But I think when you think about presentation, particularly on the World Sickle Cell Day stage, who are the best target that we want to reach? I think it might not necessarily be the patient, it may be the public, because public don't know much about it, because the patients already live and know and experience this. But actually, when you have families asking these questions, how do I deal with a toddler who often is sick from sickle cell disease? I would like to know more about sickle cell disease. How can I help my son with sickle cell disease? And you see, the majority of the questions are actually from parents. And it was very nice to listen to Yemi's story again, and every time I listen to it, it's like a new story. So I think ASCA this year again would definitely be engaging you. So it's a privilege to hear the stories from the people who experience it, and actually, and we also kind of after the patient session in ASCA 2019. We have presented the material at European Haematology Association, and we want to kind of work on it this year in a much bigger way. And I like the way that Joe has already just already talking about the multi-organ involvement. And also, Joe, I think I missed the first part, but you talked about survival and also some of the things that are very, very important in actually kind of influencing the survival of patients living with sickle cell disease. And you could see that a number of actions and steps that were taken actually led to significant kind of impact. And actually, I think the World Sickle Cell Day, which was actually established in 2009 for the 19th of June, is also an opportunity for us to actually engage with policymakers, engage with governments, and actually, I'm sure it's good for us to see whether that has an impact on the outcome of people living with sickle cell disease. And when we look at the various things that really affect people living with sickle cell disease, like Yemi talked about losing 2 of her siblings with sickle cell disease, the causes of mortality is actually kind of vary depending on the community, depending on the location. Obviously, in Africa, infection is still very key, very, very important. But multi-organ involvement, which Joy talked about, are very important. But I thought, I think Agnes said I should talk about psychological issues in sickle cell disease, but obviously I'll just kind of go around. But I think the reality is that I will need to also talk about what COVID has done to us. But when you think about the quality of life or living with sickle cell disease, there are a number of risk factors that can make things very difficult. Somebody that is suffering from acute or chronic pain, and then people who, I mean, talk about emotional relationship. Again, that was actually highlighted by Yemi's presentation. And also and then issues that we know are very very common with our young people, things like adherence. Again, I'm a pediatrician, so I think about young adult, I mean children who are going into the adolescent period and actually begin to seek their self-independence and actually begin to think, why do I have to take this medication? My life is not all about sickle cell disease, which is true, but actually it's important to make sure that we can deal with them. And then we're talking about school absences, which affect their academic performance. And then the period of time of hospitalization, again, reduces their interaction. And this was a slide given to me by Masha, is a friend of mine. And she's kind of talking about the impact of, so particularly when we think about COVID-19, what is the impact on families? What is the impact in sickle cell disease? And really, this can generate a lot of feelings, a lot of very different responses. And these responses could be very difficult. These responses actually could be very challenging. And so when we think about all the various recommendations, particularly about COVID-19 management, again, some psychologists don't like the word social distancing. They want us to use more physical distancing than social distancing. But actually, if you're socially distant, you shouldn't be socially kind of separated from your people. So you should continue to maintain the social connection, because those are the things that keep us, those are the things that strengthen us. But uncertainty about employment. So for example, in the United Kingdom, we have a system whereby people living with sickle cell disease and other who are described as vulnerable conditions actually have the opportunity to say, okay, uh, I, I- you don't go to work because you are described as this, and your employer will have to keep you because the government will pay some part of the salary. But that provision is not available to everyone and to every country, and even the US, they don't have that kind of provision. So, but in terms of people are worried about their housing, losing their, I mean, they have to kind of make it clear for mortgage companies that um, people can have miss their payment for a period of 6 months so that people don't lose their houses. And so those are some of the things that people really, if you can't be assured of your housing, and then you also obviously at increased risk of developing mental illness as a result of a combination of these factors. And therefore it is so something that leads to a lot of anxiety, becoming ill. And if I call and I talk to my patients' parents and I said to them, can you use one word to describe COVID to me? I've had various words. I have like almost 20 words from different people, things like anxiety, things like stressful. And then some of the young people actually feel it's more of a suppression that actually upsets them. Say it's making me a prisoner. So these things are experienced by other people. But actually, if you experience them in addition to pain management or the pain experiences, that makes it much more challenging for you. And so one of the things that we try to kind of encourage parents and patients to do is to continue to take their medications. So anxiety, I mean, just how do you respond to anxiety? It can help us to do better. It can help us to recruit all our resources and make sure that we do well in exams, to do well in various difficult situations. But also it can hurt us when we're overwhelmed by it. We think about the worst. So for example, like one of the things that I want to encourage patients with sickle cell disease to realize is that even if perchance you get COVID, the majority of people will survive. So for example, like we have had a data from the UK, and over 90% of adults who have had COVID, they actually overcome it. And that's similar to the population, the general population. Obviously, we still argue that sickle cell disease is a risk factor, but actually, when we look at the data so far, it is looking very promising that actually people with SS actually may even do probably much better. So is they need to know that story. They need to know that that is possible, and people actually will get well. And but anxiety can really cause a lot of problem. And then how do we manage stress? How do we deal with this? This is kind of a kind of really a chart that shows you one of the things that you could do: connect with people, connect with the various networks that you have, connect by various methods. Uh, and then I think I like this one: take a break from the news. So sometimes I sit watching the television and the same story comes up 30 times. If you watch it 30 times, it embeds more in your mind. So I think maybe just limit that, and then do some more fun things. Watch a lot of kind of good Netflix music, movies, and probably, yeah. And then we can, for example, you feel stressed, take action, get out, move there, and keep some structure. So for example, like during the pandemic, during the lockdown, you needed to have a structure to make sure you wake up, have a shower, dress up as if you're going to work, and also make sure that you eat food and you do it at regular time, not just, so some of those things were some of the things that actually could help us. So stay connected, calling just, so when you think about the psychological impact, think about how to deal with a number of issues, how to relate with the community, and also how to connect with other people. Then there are other forms of psychology that can be available to you. So we make sure that our psychology service is available, and we actually can connect patients virtually to make sure that some of the issues that they have can be dealt with. And then this diagram says thinking about dealing with emotion as similar to cultivation. So if you need to, what do you put in your mind? Healthy seeds, healthy soil, facilitate germination. How do you have healthy seeds? Um, the thing that you think about, the thing that you feed yourselves in, and then the environment that you kind of find yourself in, and so all of this would lead to you harvesting kind of a better fruit. So set intention for success, peaceful environment, prepare for the desired life. And I think I like again Yemi's comment. She says, "I now know that I have a purpose." She's always known that anyway, but she just says it's become more and more clear to me that I have a purpose. I have something to actually give, and nothing kind of beats value. If you feel some value, you really can feel very much better. So I thought maybe this is some of the things that I think, just to kind of highlight some of the issues. But if I had time, probably I can try and address some of the questions that people raise. But and I think, let me just see. I hope my slide is there because I wanted some. I hope I didn't put. Uh, I have, okay, great. So this is it. All right. Joy mentioned about hydroxyurea treatment. For me, it is a very key thing that has really, really changed the perspective of sickle cell disease. And I encourage people to make sure that they get the right dosage, the right treatment. And I think that is very important because some people try for 2-3 months without really reaching the proper dosages. And actually somehow they're not able to recognize that that actually works very well. And then also you mentioned some of the new therapies that are actually been approved. And I think these are the options that are available to us. Hydroxyurea management, blood transfusion may be more limited, particularly in Africa, but actually where you have it, obviously the treatment remains really top in terms of really making the impact. But hydroxyurea is something that I have found of increasing value. What are some of the barriers? Obviously, people are worried about fertility, worried about all kinds of side effects. But actually, when you get down to it and look at it, actually, some of these problems are really not being described specifically for sickle cell patients. Particularly like the secondary cancer with hydroxyurea has been described in other myeloproliferative disorders, which are actually pre-cancer settings. So I think the story about hydroxyurea to really improve the outcome of life is very important. Bone marrow transplantation, yes, it's a mainstay of treatment, but actually it's very expensive. You cannot get it free of charge. So I know in the past it was like one of my patients about, I think 7 years ago, came and had a bone marrow transplantation in the UK. They came from Nigeria. They had to pay 150,000 pounds to get that treatment done. But that treatment now is about 500,000 pounds. So it is not that easy for those who have to pay for it. But at least but if you are entitled to the service, then obviously that is something that is available to you and is accessible. And also what the gene therapy has an advantage over the bone marrow transplantation is that you don't need a separate donor. But sometimes the donor availability can be the challenge in sickle cell disease, because you may not get an immediate person that will be HL identical donor in terms of HL identical sibling. But obviously the other methods are looking at the haplomatch protocol and also looking at match unrelated donor. But the best outcome is a sibling match donor. So I don't want to talk about gene therapy because Joy has already spoken about that. But in summary, I mean, I just mentioned to you about our Arise project, and the fact that it gives us opportunity to work and develop a lot of skills in Africa. And then I think I didn't talk much about blood transfusion, but hydroxyurea is something that I think we should definitely pay a lot of attention, because that can be available all over the world, and it's cheap. Obviously, the monitoring can be modified to make sure that this is fine. And then this one, obviously, are things that are happening. Gene therapy is something that is really very promising. I don't know whether Joy was able to see some of the EHA presentations, but they're very, very interesting. So I want to say really thank you for the opportunity, and happy World Sickle Cell Day.